It was a perfect evening in the city, calm, ordinary, and just like any other day. No one could have guessed that behind closed doors, a storm was brewing that would shake an entire family forever. The story you're about to hear is not just about betrayal. It's about how one moment of truth can turn someone's entire life upside down. Everything started when a popular TV show, known for exposing secret affairs, aired an episode that would become the center of a shocking tragedy. The show had built a reputation for uncovering hidden truths, bringing to light the secrets that people thought would never come out. People loved the drama, the twists, and the confrontations. But no one ever imagined that one episode would lead to something this horrifying. The couple in question seemed like any other ordinary married pair from the outside. The husband, a hard-working man who always did his best to provide for his family, trusted his wife completely. They had been together for years, sharing dreams, laughter, and countless memories. But beneath that perfect image, something dark was hiding, something that was about to come out in the most public way possible. The husband had no idea that his wife was living a double life. Rumors had been circulating among a few close friends, but he always brushed them off, believing that trust was the foundation of their marriage. He never thought his wife would betray him. After all, they had been through so much together. He loved her deeply and believed she felt the same. But the truth has a strange way of revealing itself, especially when cameras are involved. The wife had been seeing another man for months, meeting in secret, exchanging messages behind her husband's back. What she didn't know was that someone had tipped off the producers of the TV show. The show's team started following her, gathering evidence without her knowledge. Hidden cameras, private investigators. Everything was being set up behind the scenes. When the episode finally aired, millions of viewers watched as a hidden truth unfolded before their eyes. The footage showed everything. The meetings, the stolen kisses, the moments of betrayal. It was undeniable. The wife was caught red-handed. The entire nation watched the drama unfold. But for one man sitting alone in his living room, it wasn't just a show. It was his life falling apart right in front of him. Imagine the shock, the pain, the anger he must have felt in that moment. The person he had trusted the most, the woman he had shared his life with, had been living a lie. The humiliation of discovering the truth on national television was something no one could ever prepare for. His mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Why did she do it? How could she betray him like this? Neighbors would later say that the husband seemed like a quiet, peaceful man. He wasn't the type to lose his temper easily. But betrayal has a way of pushing people to their breaking point. In that moment, something inside him snapped. The pain of being deceived mixed with the humiliation of having his private life exposed to the entire world. The rage began to build, slowly taking over every rational thought in his mind. As the night went on, the husband's emotions spiraled out of control. He replayed the scenes from the show over and over again, unable to believe what he'd seen. Each second felt like a fresh wound, cutting deeper into his heart. The woman he loved was no longer the woman he thought he knew. No one knows exactly what went through his mind during those hours. But one thing is certain. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the man who'd been sitting quietly in front of his TV was gone. In his place was someone consumed by rage, heartbreak, and a desire for revenge. The story of this couple began years ago, in what seemed like a perfect love story. They met through mutual friends, and from the very first moment, there was an instant connection between them. The husband was a hard-working man, dedicated to his job and his family. He was the kind of person who believed in loyalty and trust. People around him often described him as calm, quiet, and always putting his family first. His wife, on the other hand, was known for her beauty and charm. She had a friendly personality that could light up any room. The two seemed like the perfect match, a couple that everyone admired. They built a life together, sharing dreams of a happy future. They had a small home in a peaceful neighborhood where everyone minded their own business. From the outside, they looked like the kind of couple who had it all: love, stability, and a future full of promise. But what people see on the outside is often very different from what happened behind closed doors. Over time, cracks began to show in their marriage. The husband's long working hours meant he was often away, trying to provide a better life for his family. Meanwhile, His wife started spending more time out of the house. At first, it was just casual outings with friends. But slowly, those outings became more frequent, and the excuses started piling up. He trusted her completely, never questioning where she was going or who she was meeting. Love had blinded him to the signs that were becoming more and more obvious. Late-night phone calls, sudden mood swings, and unexplained absences. All the little red flags that most people would notice when unnoticed by him. The wife played her part well, always coming home with a smile, pretending everything was fine. But there was something deeper happening beneath the surface. She had been seeing another man behind her husband's back, a secret lover who made her feel alive in ways she hadn't felt in years. Their meetings were carefully planned, always hidden from prying eyes. Hotels, parked cars, and secret messages. They thought they were clever enough to never get caught. What neither of them knew was that someone had already noticed. A close friend of the family had seen the wife meeting the same man on more than one occasion. Whispers started spreading quietly among the neighbors. Some chose to stay out of it, while others felt it was only a matter of time before the truth would come out. The final blow came when the TV show got involved. It was a popular reality program that specialized in exposing cheating partners. People would send in anonymous tips, and the show's team would investigate, using hidden cameras and private detectives to gather evidence. Someone had sent in a tip about the wife, a tip that would set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. For weeks, the show's team followed her every move. They captured footage of her secret meetings, recorded phone conversations, and gathered enough evidence to prove the affair without any doubt. The producers knew they had a bombshell story in their hands, one that would keep viewers glued to their screens. They planned everything carefully, making sure the husband wouldn't find out until the episode aired. When the show finally broadcasted the episode, the entire neighborhood tuned in. People watched in shock as the hidden cameras revealed the truth. The wife was seen meeting her lover in a hotel lobby, exchanging kisses, and holding hands like a couple without a care in the world. The evidence was undeniable. The woman who everyone thought was devoted to her husband had been living a double life all along. As the video played on television, the husband was sitting alone in his living room. He had no idea what he was about to witness. The moment he saw his wife's face on the screen, his heart stopped. The world around him seemed to freeze as the truth unfolded before his eyes. The woman he had loved, trusted, and built a life with was nothing but a stranger. Every second of footage felt like a knife stabbing deeper into his chest. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The secret meetings, the stolen kisses, the lies. It was all playing out in front of millions of people. His mind raced with questions, but there were no answers. The humiliation of discovering betrayal in such a public way was something no one could ever prepare for. People around the neighborhood started calling each other, whispering about what they had just seen. Some felt pity for the husband, while others couldn't help but talk about the scandal. The wife had become the center of attention overnight, but for all the wrong reasons. What was supposed to be a secret affair had now become a national headline. Inside that small house, the husband's world was falling apart. His heart was broken, his pride shattered, and his mind consumed by anger. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about how the truth was exposed for everyone to see. The man who had spent his life providing for his family was now the subject of whispers and pity. No one knew what would happen next. But one thing was certain. The man sitting alone in that living room was no longer the same person. Something inside him had changed, and the worst was yet to come. The night dragged on slowly as the husband sat in the dimly lit living room, staring at the black screen of the television. His mind was trapped in a loop, replaying the painful images he had just seen. The air felt heavy, and the silence in the house was louder than ever. Every tick of the clock echoed in his ears, pushing him deeper into the storm of emotions swirling inside him. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone, scrolling through old messages from his wife. The same woman who once promised to stand by his side through thick and thin had been living a lie right under his nose. The affectionate texts, the sweet, "I love you" messages, they all felt like poison now. Every word she had ever spoken to him seemed fake, like a carefully crafted mask hiding her true self. The betrayal cut deep, but what made it worse was how the whole world knew about it before he did. His private life had been turned into entertainment for millions of strangers. He felt exposed, humiliated, and completely broken. The anger inside him started boiling, mixing with the pain in a dangerous way. His breathing became heavier as his thoughts grew darker with every passing second. Outside, the night was silent. The neighbors were asleep, unaware of the storm raging behind those closed doors. The wife hadn't returned home yet. Maybe she was still out with her lover, completely unaware that her darkest secret had been revealed. The thought of her laughing and enjoying herself while he was drowning in pain made the husband's blood boil even more. With every passing minute, the images from the TV show replayed in his mind like a nightmare on repeat. The way she smiled at her lover, the gentle touches, the stolen kisses, all of it haunted him. How could she betray him like this after everything they had been through? What had he done to deserve this kind of pain? He tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept coming back stronger. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat louder than the last. The humiliation was too much to bear. He felt like everyone was laughing behind his back, friends, neighbors, even strangers who had watched the show. His whole life had been reduced to a headline, a scandal that people would gossip about for weeks. As the hours passed, the husband's mind spiraled further into darkness. He glanced at the clock. It was almost 3 a.m. Still, there was no sign of his wife. His breathing grew heavier, his eyes bloodshot from anger and sleeplessness. He stood up slowly, pacing back and forth in the living room. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in on him, trapping him in his own misery. Memories of their life together flashed through his mind. Their wedding day, the birth of their child, the promises they had made to each other. How could everything fall apart so easily? How could she throw away years of love and loyalty for a few moments of forbidden pleasure? His heart ached with a pain so deep that it felt like it would never heal. The thought of her lying in another man's arms burned through his soul. He clenched his fists tightly, his nails digging into his palms. The anger inside him was no longer something he could control. It was a fire, spreading quickly and consuming every rational thought in its path. Suddenly, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the silence. His heart skipped a beat. He walked slowly toward the window, peeking through the curtains. The headlights went off, and the engine stopped. A few moments later, the front door creaked open. His wife stepped inside quietly, thinking he was asleep. She closed the door behind her and tiptoed through the hallway. The smell of cheap perfume lingered in the air, a scent he didn't recognize. The moment he saw her face, something inside him snapped. Without saying a word, he stepped out of the shadows. The wife froze, her eyes widening in shock. For a moment, there was only silence, a heavy, suffocating silence that filled the entire room. The husband's eyes locked onto hers, burning with rage and heartbreak. "Where have you been?" His voice was low, but there was something dangerous hidden beneath the calm tone. The wife stammered, trying to come up with an excuse, but the guilt was written all over her face. She knew he had seen the show. She knew there was no way out of this. "You think I don't know?" he whispered, his voice trembling with anger. "I saw everything on TV. The whole world saw it." Tears welled up in the wife's eyes, but it was too late for apologies. The damage was already done. The husband's heart pounded harder as the anger took full control. He could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears, drowning out everything else. The room felt smaller with each passing second. The air was thick with tension, heavy with unspoken words and broken promises. The wife took a step back, sensing the storm brewing inside him, but there was nowhere to run. Every lie, every betrayal, every painful memory came rushing back all at once. The husband's mind blurred between reality and rage. His hands shook as he reached into the drawer beside him. In a split second, the weight of cold metal filled his palm. Time seemed to slow down. The walls of the room closed in even tighter. His vision narrowed, focused only on the woman who had destroyed everything he had ever loved. His heart was racing, his mind clouded by anger. The wife's eyes widened in fear as she realized what was happening. Her voice trembled as she tried to beg for forgiveness. But the husband couldn't hear her anymore. The fire inside him had completely taken over, leaving nothing but darkness behind. The line between love and hate had disappeared, and there was no turning back. The sudden silence in the room was suffocating. The wife's breath quickened as fear painted her face. She had never seen him like this before, his eyes dark, his chest rising and falling with deep, uneven breaths. The man who once looked at her with love was now a stranger standing just a few feet away. The tension hung heavy, filling every corner of the small room. Her heart pounded in her chest as she slowly backed away, trying to create distance between them. But the husband's eyes never left her, cold, unblinking, and filled with rage. His fingers tightened around the cold metal hidden in his hand, but he didn't move. The only sound in the room was the ticking of the wall clock, each second stretching out like an eternity. The wife tried to speak, but her voice cracked under the weight of fear. I can explain. Her words hung in the air, but they meant nothing to him. How could she explain months of lies? How could she explain the stolen kisses, the secret meetings, the betrayal that played out for the whole world to see? There was nothing left to say. The husband's mind was clouded with images from the TV show, the way she smiled at her lover, the way she touched him like she used to touch him. Those memories played on repeat, pushing him further into the darkness. He could feel the walls closing in, squeezing the last bit of sanity out of him. His breathing grew heavier as he took a slow step forward. The wife flinched, her back pressing against the cold wall. Tears filled her eyes, but even she knew there was no sympathy left in his heart. He had given her everything, his love, his trust, his whole life, and she had thrown it all away like it meant nothing. "You made a fool out of me," he muttered, his voice low and broken. In front of everyone, the wife's lips trembled as she shook her head. It was a mistake. "Please, let me explain." But her words only fueled the fire burning inside him. A mistake? Months of lies, secret meetings, and betrayal. All of it reduced to a simple mistake? The anger inside him boiled over, pushing him further into a place where reason no longer existed. He gripped the cold metal tighter, feeling its weight in his hand. The thought of the whole world watching him suffer played in his mind like a cruel joke. He could almost hear the whispers of neighbors, the gossip behind closed doors, everyone laughing at the man who couldn't even keep his own wife faithful. His heart pounded louder, matching the ticking of the clock. The wife's breathing grew shallow as she pressed herself against the wall, her wide eyes locked on his trembling hand. The fear in her eyes was clear, but it wasn't enough to break through the thick cloud of rage surrounding him. "You ruined everything," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Everything we built, everything I gave you." Tears streamed down the wife's face, but her cries only echoed in the empty room. The man standing before her was no longer the husband she had married. He was a broken man, pushed past the edge by betrayal and humiliation. Every second felt heavier, the room drowning in a suffocating silence. The clock ticked on, each sound pulling him deeper into the darkness. His mind raced between love and hate, pain and fury. The woman who had once been his whole world was now the reason that world was crashing down around him. The wife's knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, sobbing. "I'm sorry. Please, I'm sorry." But apologies meant nothing now. They couldn't erase the images burned into his mind. They couldn't erase the whispers that would follow him for the rest of his life. His hand trembled as he raised the weapon slightly. The cold metal felt heavy in his grip, carrying the weight of every broken promise, every sleepless night, and every lie she had ever told. Time seemed to stand still in that moment. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in tighter with every breath. The wife's sobs echoed in his ears, but his mind was far away, trapped in a storm of anger and heartbreak. He could feel the darkness pulling him in, clouding his vision and drowning out every rational thought. The fire inside him burned brighter, threatening to consume what little was left of his sanity. The wife crawled forward on her knees, her hands trembling as she reached out toward him. "Please, don't do this. I still love you." Those words cut through him like a knife. Love? How could she speak of love after everything she had done? The very word felt like poison on her lips. His heart pounded harder, the rage and pain battling inside him. The line between right and wrong blurred until there was nothing left but the crushing weight of betrayal. His vision narrowed, his mind spiraling deeper into the darkness. Every second stretched on endlessly, the whole world holding its breath in that small, suffocating room. The husband's finger trembled on the cold trigger, his heart racing as he stood on the edge of a decision that could never be undone. The wife's sobs filled the silence, but the man she had once known was already gone. What remained was a shattered soul, broken, betrayed, and pushed to the very edge. In that room, time stood still. What happened next would change everything forever. The sun slowly started to rise, casting a pale light through the thin curtains. The husband sat alone in the living room, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. The night had passed without sleep, only endless thoughts eating away at his mind. His heart was heavy, crushed under the weight of betrayal. The whole world had seen what he wished he never knew. His life had been turned into a public scandal, and there was no way to escape it now. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, each sound echoing in the empty house. The coffee table was still cluttered with half-smoked cigarettes, an empty glass, and a remote control he had clenched tightly in his hand the whole night. His mind kept replaying every moment from the TV show, the hidden cameras, the stolen kisses, the lies she told him day after day. He thought he knew his wife better than anyone. He thought their love was unbreakable. But now, everything felt like a cruel illusion. The woman he had built his whole life around had been living another life right behind his back. The pain wasn't just about the affair. It was about the humiliation, the betrayal that played out in front of millions of strangers. His hands trembled as he scrolled through his phone. Social media was flooded with clips from the episode. People were talking about the scandal, laughing, judging, gossiping. His name was being whispered in every corner of the neighborhood. Friends who used to respect him now looked at him with pity. He couldn't even step outside without feeling the weight of their eyes on him. The messages kept coming in, some from friends trying to comfort him, others just curious to know what would happen next. But none of them truly understood what he was going through. They hadn't built a life only to watch it fall apart overnight. They hadn't given their heart to someone who shattered it into pieces. His chest rose and fell with deep, shaky breaths as he scrolled further. Then he saw it, a comment that made his blood freeze. What kind of man doesn't know his wife is cheating? Pathetic. The words hit him like a bullet. The anger bubbling inside him turned into something darker. He clenched his fist so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The humiliation was unbearable, not just from his wife's betrayal, but from a whole world watching him suffer. He had always been a calm man, someone who believed in forgiveness and second chances. But that night had changed something deep inside him. The rage that had been building quietly for months was now clawing its way to the surface. The man who once believed in love and loyalty was slowly disappearing, replaced by someone consumed by pain and anger. Outside, the neighborhood was slowly waking up. Birds chirped in the distance, and cars passed by on the empty street. But inside that small house, time stood still. The walls seemed to close in tighter with each passing second. His mind raced with thoughts he never imagined he would have. He glanced toward the bedroom door, where his wife still hadn't returned. Hours had passed, and she hadn't even called. Maybe she was still with him, her secret lover, pretending everything was normal while he was drowning in pain. The thought burned through him like fire. How could she come home every night, kiss him on the cheek, and sleep next to him while living a lie? How long had she been doing this? How many nights had she whispered, "I love you," with another man's name in her heart? The more he thought about it, the harder it became to control the storm building inside him. His hands shook as he reached for the small drawer under the TV cabinet. Inside, hidden beneath some old papers, was something I hoped he would never have to touch again, a small silver handgun, tucked away for protection. His fingers traced the cold metal as his mind spiraled deeper into the darkness. The weight of the gun felt heavier than ever, not just in his hand, but in his soul. He didn't even know why he had taken it out. Maybe it was just the need to feel in control again. Maybe it was the only thing that made him feel powerful in a life where everything else had been taken from him. The clock kept ticking. Every second dragged him closer to a decision he could never take back. His heart pounded louder in his chest. His mind fought between the man he used to be and the broken man he had become. Suddenly, the front door creaked open. His wife's footsteps echoed through the hallway. The faint scent of perfume filled the air. Not the same perfume she used to wear, but something new, something cheap, something unfamiliar. She stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind her, thinking he was still asleep. Her hair was messy and her makeup smudged. Guilt was written all over her face. But when she turned and saw him sitting in the living room, her whole body froze. Their eyes locked. Two souls staring at each other from opposite sides of a shattered love story. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavier than ever. The husband's fingers tightened around the cold metal in his hand. Hidden beneath the table, the wife's voice trembled as she tried to act normal. I went out with friends. I didn't want to wake you. A bitter smile flickered across the husband's face, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had heard every lie she had ever told, but this one cut the deepest. Friends. His voice was low, almost a whisper. Is that what you're calling him now? The wife's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes darted to the TV, then back to him. She realized in that moment. He had seen everything. There was no way to hide it anymore. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stumbled over her words. I can explain. It wasn't what you think. But he had heard enough explanations. Every excuse felt like another knife to the heart. His mind blurred between love and hatred, between forgiveness and revenge. The man who had once promised to protect her now sat with a weapon in his hand, wrestling with demons he never thought he would face. The room grew colder as the weight of the moment settled in. The wife's sobs filled the air, but they sounded distant, like an echo from another life. The husband's finger trembled on the trigger, his heart pounding harder with each breath. Time slowed down. The walls seemed to close in tighter. Every second dragged on endlessly. What happened next would change both of their lives forever. But sometimes, the scariest part of a story isn't what happens. It's what could happen. If you're still watching this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. These true stories remind us how fragile life can be and how one moment can change everything.